Tell me your true scary stories.
I've got one. When I was 11 years old, I could never sleep. I was scared. Every night, strange creatures would crawl from the dark, continuing to stare at me with their beady white eyes, and grin with a toothy smile. I would beg them to stop, but no matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't stop. It even got to the point when I wanted to leave my home and never come back. But one day they left. And even in my new home, I still don't see them. But every once in a while, I get a glimpse of those weird figures. One night I was like half awake and I turned my head and saw this huge black figure that was the shape of like a dog or something. I faced the ceiling and look back and it's gone. Then another night I wake up and look at the hallway. I see a black figure run out of the bathroom. I go into my parents' room and they're both asleep, and the next day I think around the same time I see it happen again. It happened when I was 11. I was a bit of a problem child then, and had a habit of staying up at night. One night I was sitting in my room. My room is located so that if you open the door to my room, you can see a long corridor in our house directly from it. This corridor is so long that no light enters it at night. And so, I'm sitting in my room and drawing something in the album. At some point I turn to the door and see something standing in the corridor, similar in height to a child of 8 and 9 years old. And this something was on this long red bag. At first I did not understand what I had just seen. I began to blink, rub my eyes, do everything to unsee it. But it didn't go away, and then the thought, what if it doesn't seem to you at all, flashed through my head. I had no idea what to do. I just turned to the table and tried not to think that this something was actually right outside my door. I did not hear any strange sounds, only the sound of my heartbeat. At some point, I heard steps somewhere far away in the corridor. I did not dare to turn around. It turned out that my mother woke up. She came to my room and scolded me for not sleeping. I have never seen anything like it. I still don't know what it was. When I was about 8 years old, my aunt and uncle had a baby. They lived in Mexico near a lake. It was around 5 a.m. and it was raining really hard outside. They woke up and heard cries really near. When they heard them, they immediately knew it was La Llorona, and my uncle went to get his baby ASAP. After that, they put their baby in their room cause their baby already had its own room, and they didn't hear her for the rest of the night. It's said that if you hear her near you, then she's far, and if you hear her far away, she's near you, so it's safe to assume that she was far away. My big brother used to have an imaginary brother, and he would always play with him, but sometimes he would say, "Stop, leave me alone," or "No, I don't want to go to my room to play." My mom would ask him what's going on, and he would say he won't leave me alone. Of course, my mom had no idea what he was talking about, and thought it was just him being a kid with an imaginary friend. Well, a day after my brother's birthday, he had these balloons, and keep in mind my brother is just a little kid, and he's obviously not tall, so he couldn't reach the plates, knives, forks, etc. It was around 10-11 p.m., and my mom heard the balloons pop, so she went outside, and my brother looked really scared, so my mom asked him, "What's happened? Did you pop the balloons?" And my brother said, freaking out, "No, it was him," pointing to his imaginary friend that my mom obviously couldn't see. My mom saw the knife next to the balloons and immediately knew that he was too short to reach any of those things, so she said, "Get out of my house," to my brother's imaginary friend. Since my mom couldn't see him, she asked my brother if he left already, and he said he had left, and thanked my mom. Later, about 10-15 minutes later, my cousins came over, and my cousin said that he saw a woman in all white with her hair in front of her face in the front door. My brother said that that was his mom, and she opened the door. My cousins were already inside and asked my brother if she was still there, and my brother said yes, and that she was mad. She started to yell for her to get out, and then she asked my brother if she was still here, and he said no. My brother is now 19, and says he still sometimes sees him in his mirror. When I was 10, me and my grandpa were driving to a ranch in Mexico. It was 3:40 in the morning, and we were driving on supposedly haunted road. My grandpa had a blue Ford pickup truck. Anyways, my grandpa and I were just making conversation. He then said, "This road is haunted. A lady stands on the side of the road asking for rides." So I got scared and started looking out the window. 40 minutes past, the sun is still down. My grandpa keeps looking at his rear view mirror. I asked him what's wrong, and he lied, "Nothing." I then look at the mirror, my heart drops, and I'm just paralyzed in fear. I see a woman in a white dress with pitch black eyes in the back of our truck. My grandpa looks at the mirror once again, and I'm guessing he sees it as well, and he just slams on the brakes. We both just look at each other. We look at the mirrors, and she was gone. Me and my grandpa addressed what happened and confirmed that we both saw her. We got out of the truck, and we were moments away from falling into a deep TCH off the road. If my grandpa hadn't slammed on the brakes, we could have been dead. Ever since, we never took that road. Scariest moment in my life. Me and my cousin were walking at a park one late night in Mexico, and a white little dog kept following us, but this dog looked a little weird and its back was all humped. But anyways, when we were walking to our house, the dog just kept following us, and every time we turned around it gave us this creepy stare. By the time we got home, we looked back, and the dog wasn't there, so we just never thought of it as weird until when we turned on the TV. We had a little window on our roof so we could see the sky, and when we looked up, the dog was just staring at us and started scratching at the window really aggressively. So my cousin went to go get his bat. As I stood there watching him scratch at the window, he looked a bit off and edgy, as if someone was in his skin. But by the time my cousin got back, he was just staring, so we went up there. It was only a ladder, so there is no way he got up there. He wasn't there except a smell like a dead body. Later, some dog that looked like the same dog from last night was found dead with its stomach cut open. Thank God we moved. This was one of my first paranormal experiences. I was about 8 or 9. It was a summer night, and I was in my room sleeping. Because it was so hot, I didn't need any blankets to cover myself up. In the middle of the night, I must have slipped my leg of the bed. I woke up to something scratching my foot. I don't have any pets in my house. I looked down and saw hands under the bed. They looked really old and had really long nails, like witches' hands. I started moving, blinking and stuff just to convince myself that the stuff that I was seeing is not real. It was. I ran off and told my parents about it, but they were acting like any other parents, saying that it was just a nightmare. However, the next day I woke up, looked at my foot, and saw a scratch. My bed is also like fully covered in this material, and doesn't have any sharp edges or anything that I could have scratched myself on. Later in my life, I've discovered that in my religion there are things called genes. There are good and bad ones. They can try to shape into humans, but every time I try they fail. Basically, it was a gene that night that have scratched me. Since then, I don't sleep without being covered in blanket at night. When I was just a child, a 6-year-old boy, I woke when it's 3:00 and I checked the windows and I saw a man who was laughing and just disappear. The next day I went to school and one of my classmates said, "Bro, I saw a man laughing in 3:00 and I was like, what the bro, I saw that too in mine. Could he be in my house?" The next day when I was awake, and it's now 3:00 and I checked the same thing but nothing. I went back to sleep and I saw a white lady. I went frozen and I will never forget that day. When I was in the ROTC program for HS, my sergeant was teaching class and there's a room right beside of where I sit. Now most of the time the room light is on. But suddenly the room light just turned off. Later in class, I saw a figure in the room. It had a face but nothing I'd seen before. I panicked in front of class and my sergeant asked me, "What the hell are you on? There's someone in the changing room." My sergeant went to go check the room and found nothing. Never been back to that classroom since I quit. Have no clue who or what that was. Well, I have a story of my own. Well, that day I was at school and there was a rumor going around about a creepy doll. So me and some of my classmates and friends decided we would go check it out. But when we started walking to the back of the campus, I told one of my friends that we should go back because I thought one of our teachers would scold us, so we left while the other continued walking. My best friend said that we had our arms crossed together like you see in the movies where they walk together, kind of like this. She said we were scared, which wasn't true, because as I said earlier, I was with a friend. Some of my classmates confirmed this was true, and they all said I repeated these exact words. Best friend's name: I'm scared. I am scared. Cat. When they told me this, I got cold, goosebumps, etc. But when we went back to class, I started laughing and crying. Till this day, I still think about this event. This happened 1 year ago. This happened when I was 12. I am a female. At a county club on the 14th April. This still creeps me out just thinking about it. My mom, sister's friend, and I just arrived at the country club because I wanted to practice some drills in squash. We walk into the bar area to pay for the court, and there is this lady with her son, at least I think it was her son, sitting on one of the bar stools. The woman looked about 25-30 years old, and the son looked about 4-6 years old. She looked at our dog and was almost squeezing its neck. After that, she looked at my mom and said hello, and then looked at me dead in the eye. She walked towards and held out her hand. I took her hand to shake it, but she didn't move it. She just kept her hand still and wouldn't let go. She started talking to me and asking me questions, but I have no clue what she said. She is so quiet and almost like she muttered the words. The only thing I could quite make out was the word medical. Then it was almost like time stopped, and all the sound disappeared around me. The only thing I could hear was her quiet muttering. I told my mom I was going to the squash courts, but as I walked a few steps out of the doorway, I felt these eyes watching me. My back was facing the doorway. I turned around and saw her watching me from inside the bar. After that, I didn't feel safe enough to go to the squash courts alone, so I walked back to my mom and waited for her to finish paying. Fast forward to when I'm done playing squash and I played with my friend a bit. When I finished playing with my friend, she went to go and put her squash things away on the court next door. When I went to my friend, we were the only ones at the squash court, but my mom was walking inside. She was by the stands closing her squash bag. I saw the lady standing there by the side of the stands watching her. She muttered something, but we both didn't hear what. She left the squash court when my mom got there and disappeared. I walked my friend to her parent, and I quickly walked back to my mom. But it's very weird because I can't get a good picture of her in my head, even though she almost stared into my soul. I just cannot remember what she looks like, and I had a pain in my head. We have never seen her since and still wonder what she might have done if I left my friend by herself. Has anyone had a similar experience? At the time, I was I think 7, maybe 8, and I was hanging out with my BSF. In my house we had the most awesome basement where we would always hang out. One time, me and my BSF were home alone when we were hanging out. We opened the basement door and walked down the stairs to the basement. In the past, we always said we could hear weird noises from the cellar under the basement stairs. It always scared us, but we never thought anything of it. Anyway, we were just playing in the basement home alone. When we heard the noise again, it sounded like a man's voice or SMTH. We were so freaked out, especially since we were home alone. We eventually got up enough courage to open the cellar door and see if anything was there. Nothing was there, so we wiped it off and continued playing. Soon after, we heard it again. Now we were really scared. I told my BSF I would get out my iPad and record, see if anything was there. YK? So I grabbed my iPad, opened the cellar door, turned on the cellar light, propped up my iPad and closed the cellar door. We were so scared we ran upstairs. We left the vid recording for ABT 6 minutes. We were scared, but we came back down and opened the cellar door and turned off the video. Scared out of our minds, my BSF and I sat down and watched the video. The video looked normal for ABT 15 seconds until you could hear us walking up the stairs, exiting the basement, when the video just went black. Completely black. The rest of the video was black all the way until you could hear us waking back down the basement stairs when the vid went back to normal. It wasn't like the light went out, but something covered the camera. It was especially weird. BC nothing was in the way of the iPad. I'm still weirded out to this day. He eventually got to the point where he started to yell. I got up and stepped into the closet, but then I heard my mom walk into the room and ask why he was yelling her name. I looked at her, and she had a towel wrapped around her. I quickly looked back into the closet and saw nothing. Absolutely nothing. This obviously creeped me and my dad out. Whatever we saw, it wasn't my mom. Whatever it was, it had her shape and even the bun. My mom always had her hair in a bun. I would have completely thought this was my imagination if it weren't for my dad also being there and seeing it too. About 5 years ago, me and my family went on holiday. The second month round, our neighbor sent a picture of a man sleeping in our front yard on our stairs. We didn't think much of it and thought it was just a homeless man who would be gone by the next week. Turns out every time my dad went to work at a specific time, he didn't go on the holiday. The same man would come to the stairs and sleep or just do random stuff and would leave who knows when, then come back the next day and repeat. He did so for about 3 weeks, and when we came back he just didn't return. It's crazy to think about how he knew. I was around 12 when I went on vacation to my grandparents' house. My cousins and family lived in the same block, so we would stay until late in the night, playing tips and telling scary stories. There was this one house on the block which was gray and rotting, dusty windows, everything was chained up and charred. The people there said there was an old woman with a really bad temper, but she had a really good voice. She had died in the house. It had caught fire. One night, me and my cousins and all the oldies sat down around the fire as if it were a weekend, gazing at the stars and telling jokes, when we heard singing. We vibed to it a bit until we realized there was no radio or anything on. One of the grandparents recognized the song, saying it was the song that the woman sang. Chills went down my spine. The wind picked up and blew the fire out. The children ran inside as the parents investigated the site. 10 years later, I am still scared of visiting my grandparents' house. The parents found nothing. I have asked the people around, saying that they have heard similar things. I recently started working for a carpentry business. I'm fresh out of high school, so I'm pretty much brand new to this type of work. One early morning, my boss had called me and told me to make my way over to one of the job sites we were at. Once I got there, he directed on me on what to do, and he was on his way. I was the only one at this specific house due to us being understaffed, 6 of us. Once he left, I took off my shoes and began walk down the steps when I heard what I sounded like panting in the basement. I figured the family just had a pet somewhere down here, so I continued walking down the stairs. I got into the room that was unfinished and had all of our equipment, and began cleaning buckets for mud when I heard a bark. But not just an ordinary bark. It sounded like a grown man imitating a bark, so I instantly assumed it was my boss who forgot something and was trying to scare me. I dropped my stuff and walked to the door and yelled his name to see if he was here. No reply. I was kinda getting a little creeped out, so I decided to leave the room I was in to make my way upstairs, but before I could, I heard that barking noise again coming from somewhere down in the basement. I went and checked one of the rooms down there, and when I seen that source of the noise, I got so scared. The way the eyes looked made me feel so uneasy. It was so uncanny the way the dog looked. It was a very large dog. Almost like a grown man was hiding inside of a dog's skin. My eyes started watering up and I had chills everywhere. My blood still runs cold thinking about it. I was spending the night at my friend's house. This was when I was 11. I can remember it to the point I know what the house looks like. Anyway, on the to his house. I wasn't too sure to be there because he was just a school friend, but I knew him for a while, and when I got there it was a nice family, but when it turned dark like 2:00 and we went upstairs because he was hungry, I didn't want to be left alone, so I went with him, and then that was our biggest mistake. My friend had a brother who had died 1 month ago, and when we went back downstairs, me and him saw a black figure that ran across the room, and then I never went there again. This happened to me when I was 8 or something. We moved into a new house and my little sister and I were allowed to sleep in our rooms on a mattress. I already gained some weird feelings in my room when I was alone. Just a reminder, my little sister's room was next to mine. For most as I can remember, we stayed up late and then went to be bed at like 10 o'clock at night. It took me a while to fall asleep. I couldn't see much because of the dark and because I don't sleep with glasses on. I remember hearing my name, yelled by my parents, over and over again. It took me a while to notice it wasn't real. The moment I began to feel sleepy, I saw something staring at me. Meanwhile, younger me would just stare at it, till I know it's real. Well, let's just say, more of them came. I do suffer sometimes from sleep paralysis. I couldn't move. I was just laying there on my back. Those creatures kept staring at me. Mostly I just tried to close my eyes and forget it all. The next morning I heard from my parents that I kept saying go away. Mother? Why are you calling me hello? Mostly something like that. I do talk in my sleep or move those things. It was just probably another paralysis or something. I also once saw Freddy Fazbear just watching over me. 3. I was at a friend's house with 2 other friends. We were playing Brawl Stars and we were playing 2v2 in friendly battle. I lost, so I screamed from anger. Suddenly a man knocked on the window. I opened the window and asked what did he want. He said, "Can you be quiet? I'm trying to sleep." After I closed the window, my friend started crying. When I asked her what's wrong, she said, "We are on the 3rd floor. Sorry I'm late to the party." I have an interesting / strange occurrence that happened to me back in 2008 when I went to college in New Hampshire. There were 4 of us hanging out in my friend's room in the freshman dorms. We were all chatting and just having a good time when my phone started ringing. When I went to answer the phone, it said Dana calling. It's important to note that Dana was in the room with us when her phone called me. When I answered, there was no sound at all. The strangest part about this whole experience is that Dana's phone was in her purse on the windowsill right below a hot water pipe that was near the ceiling. I'll never forget the look of confusion we all gave each other when this happened, and she looked really uncomfortable and said, "But my phone is in my purse over there." Later that year, we discovered that a few years before, in that same dorm room, a freshman had committed suicide by hanging himself from a pipe in that room. Coincidence? Maybe so. Either way, after finding out that information, we were all freaked out.
Thank you for watching. Write in a comment which story scared you more,